Group 290, who are here to post the colors and release the Pledge of Allegiance. So, please proceed.
Audience attention, color guard attention, audience please rise. Color guard, forward march. Halt. Color guard, post colors. Salute or hand over heart, and please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
2, color guard, about face. Forward march. Halt. Color guard dismissed without thanks. Audience at ease.
Scout troops. Call your troop together and we'll give them some badges. You're gonna have to turn around, guys. Where should I start? Here. Share that. No. Welcome. Welcome. How many merit badges do you have?
43.
Wow. Are you equal yet? Almost. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm all out. Oh, you're welcome. A motion is in order for the approval of the minutes of the October 23rd Village Board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We move in a second. Would the clerk please poll the board?
Trustee Daly.
Aye.
Trustee Madej absent. Trustee Dunham.
Aye.
Trustee Sullivan.
Aye.
Trustee Connolly.
Aye.
Trustee Kozak.
Aye. 5 aye votes, no nays, motion carries. Approval of expenditures, we have a list of bills, ratification, approval, any corrections, deletions, additions. If not, a motion is in order.
Move to approve the expenditures as presented.
Second.
Moved and second to approve the expenditures as presented. Would the clerk please poll the board?
Trustee Daly.
Aye.
Trustee Madej absent. Trustee Dunham.
Aye.
Trustee Sullivan.
Aye.
Trustee Connolly.
Aye.
Trustee Kozak.
Aye.
5 aye votes, no nays, motion carries. We have some presentations to make for worthy recipients. Presentation of retirement plaque, a 39-year service award to Richard Anderson, Battalion Chief. You don't get a merit badge.
No, I don't.
There you go. Look right over there.
It's been a great 39 years, thank you so much.
39, that's Jack Benny. Nobody knows who Jack Benny is. I do. Okay.
Congratulations.
Presentation of American Public Works Association. Appropriation item taping. David Lowry. David Lowry here?
Yeah.
I thought he left us.
If you don't lock the door, anybody can walk right in. So, well, good evening. Hi again, everybody. I'm here, it's a pleasure to be here today and back again, but this time in an official capacity for APWA as the president of the association. I get to make my third consecutive presentation of the reaccreditation award to EPW staff. The reaccreditation or accredited process by APWA started in 1997. Schaumburg was the first agency accredited. At the time, Bob Miller was the director and shepherded that through APWA and got the program started. Schaumburg, with this reaccreditation, will be the longest running agency as an accredited agency by APWA as well. 20 years as an accredited agency. So it's a couple things to be very proud of. The first agency and then the longest running agency now. Greeley, Colorado had been there with you, but they decided to opt out of the program for whatever reason. So Schaumburg's at the top alone now. What's it mean to be accredited? So a couple things. First, a little bit of the background. Schaumburg staff, the EPW staff here, is subjected to 460 practices that they're reviewed by in order to be an accredited agency. And those 460 are going to be those operational type things, safety, policies, standard operating procedures. But they're all things that make a department a well-run department. And a committee of APWA reviews these practices against what EPW has done and deems appropriate or not to be an accredited agency. In this case, they have been. But by doing this, the department's continuously reviewing its operations and its policies. And because to wait until the year before the accreditation's up to start poking around at 460 practices is just not practical. So it forces that continuous review, and staff has done a great job again doing that. So in addition, the review forces them to take advantage of any new technologies, any new practices, operational procedures, or new equipment that's out there. So again, it keeps the program up to date, keeps the operations. Ultimately, it's going to help you save some money, it's going to be more efficient, and it's going to make it a much safer place to work and safer operation. So this year, EPW was identified for 8 model practices. Now, these are practices that are unique within the industry, and the review committee deems them as something additional that other agencies can take advantage of. So this year, the 8 items that were noted as Schaumburg leading the profession in is their personal leave reporting system, their licensed, registered, and certified record maintenance, employees' requirements, orientation process, communication with the public, their user training manual, their safety manual, excavation and combined space policy, and their asset management policy. So with all of this, they deemed Schaumburg again worthy of the accreditation. So I'd like to present Mike. It's my honor here as president, and also with the board's blessing, APWA board's blessing, to present Mike Hall and his staff with his reaccreditation plaque. So Mike. You bet. Nice job. Nice job, Mark. Nice job, Mark. Yep.
Thanks. I'd like to thank Dave Lowry. Having a national president in our midst is a good accomplishment, and for him. He also spent a lot of time working on this initiative, so I appreciate his time. In addition, I wanted to bring up Margaret Timberg, our management analyst, and Marty Matreger, our logistics coordinator, who spent most of the time coordinating this effort. And without them, we would not have had this reaccreditation for the 5th time. So thank them very much. Thank you.
Round of applause. And now we have an award that we received from DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference. And we have the recipient of the award representing what was done is the Director of Human Resources, Ann Everhart.
Good evening. Each year, the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference seeks to recognize creative new programs that address issues impacting municipal members. The Village of Schaumburg submitted for DMMC review a presentation created to highlight our innovative new training program that provides employees with the opportunity to build their service skills to best meet the business needs of our growing and highly diverse community. We partnered with Safe Shaw at Work, a global compliance communication and training company, to create our Serving Diverse Customers with Success program. Our program utilizes a highly interactive and fun approach and positively draws answers from the group and builds powerful consensus among all session participants. This class, while being specific to the Village of Schaumburg, offers transferability, as many of our suburban neighbors are also experiencing rapidly changing community demographics. Because we could not share the entire course content in one evening, we developed a highly entertaining and completely employee-created video presentation. Under the direction of Mr. Rob Palekis and his production team of Carla Persky and Sean Chaya, We feature the talents of Clayton Black, Kendra Alexander, Eric Wang, Apexa Patel, Jim Walters, and Carmen Selke. Let's take a look.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Hey, thanks, guys, for all you do. You're welcome. Man, I'm hungry. Me too. But I know what you got. Peanut butter and jelly. I hope you will all agree with me. The plan B is the more sensible course of action. Yes, I like plan B as well. May I help you?
Hi, yes, can I make my water bill payment here? Hello?
I got this. I can take that for you.
Thank you.
Sure. Maybe communication would be easier if everybody was the same person. But Schaumburg, like so many communities, is becoming more diverse. But that shouldn't change anything. Regardless of background, culture, or age, our customers deserve top-notch service from our employees.
That's why the Village of Schaumburg partnered with training consultant St. Barth Shaw at Work to develop Serving Diverse Customers with Success.
The class, which has trained almost half our workforce, has given our employees the tools to provide consistently effective service for, well, anyone.
La sesión de capacitación es divertida, interactiva y se basa en los puntos fuertes de cada empleado como comunicador para crear un entorno de servicio amigable y cooperativo.
And although the course was custom-tailored for Schaumburg, it can be adapted to suit any community. In fact, we've already shared our success story with other agencies, setting the trend for excellent customer service across all types of work settings.
Schaumburg embraces its diverse community. One thing won't change, and that's the outstanding, caring customer service you'll receive no matter who you are.
Do you know him?
Oh, I've never met the man, but he is quite handsome.
For the presentation, Schaumburg was awarded the top rating from the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference. The entire cast and crew would like to come up and award that to you.
Because you know what they say, there's no business like show business.
Oh, it's so small.
I know. It's heavy.
Oh, look at that. Gorgeous. I gotta get this out of my hands real quick here.
Oh, Ann should have it. Ann.
Oh, yes, and now I.
How's that?
There we go. 1, 2, 3. Perfect, thank you.
Any liquor licenses requests to come before the board? Hearing none, you have attached to the regular agenda, the consent agenda. It'll take one motion from the village board to approve all the items on the consent agenda. If someone has a concern or a question about an item, when we get to the item, please indicate that to the clerk, and she'll take it up from the consent agenda, and it'll be discussed under committee reports. And with that, I will turn the podium over to our esteemed clerk, Marilyn Carr.
Consent agenda, number 1, liquor licenses. A, the motion would be to approve the request from Ms. Janice Kendall Ropp of the Christ Community Mennonite Church for Ladies' Night Out event on Friday, November 30th, 2018, from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. at 888 South Roselle Road. 2, proclamations. A, Small Business Saturday, November 24, 2018. 3, Engineering and Public Works Committee. A, The motion would be to waive competitive bidding, approve participation with National Joint Powers Alliance, and approve the issuance of a purchase order to Chevrolet of Watsonville, California, for purchase of one 2019 Ford Transit chassis T350 in total amount of $64,927.50. B, the motion would be to waive competitive bidding, approve participation in the National Cooperative Alliance, and authorize issuance of a purchase order to F.H. Passion of Chicago, Illinois, for the painting of walls, pipes, and epoxy floor application at Water Pumping Station Number 2 in the amount of $55,562.84. C, the motion would be to waive competitive billing, approve a contract, and authorize issuance of a purchase order to T-Comp Inc. of Joliet, Illinois, for Water Pumping Station Number 3 reservoir cleaning in the amount of $80,000 and approve the required resolution. D, the motion would be to approve an agreement for Phase 3 engineering services for the water model and master plan to Baxter and Woodman Consulting Engineers of Crystal Lake, Illinois, in the amount of $137,100 and approve the required resolution. E, the motion would be to approve an agreement for Phase 3 engineering services for the water model and master plan for the sanitary rim and invert collection program to Trotter and Associates of St. Charles, Illinois, in the amount of $136,044 and approve the required resolution. F, the motion would be to award the bid for full landscape maintenance to the lowest responsible bidder, Siebert Landscaping of Bartlett, Illinois, beginning January 1st, 2019, for a term of 1 year with 3 optional 1-year extensions not to exceed the approved budget. 4, finance, legal, administrative, and general government. The motion would be to approve the Finance Department monthly report for August 2018. B, the motion would be to approve the 5-year license agreement with Trickster Gallery for 190 South Roselle Road and approve the required resolution. C, the motion would be to approve membership in the Schaumburg Business Association and that the membership dues in the amount of $2,300 be paid. D, the motion would be to accept the comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ending April 30th, 2018. E, the motion would be to direct staff to continue to pursue compliance from all 6B recipients and prepare the necessary resolution to repeal certain Class 6B incentives for those recipients that do not comply pursuant to Section 74-7743 of the Cook County Code of Ordinances. F, the motion would be to approve the annual stipend list. G, the motion would be to set the tentative 2018 property tax levy at $20,475,945. H, the motion would be to adopt an ordinance abating taxes levied for the year 2018 heretofore levied to pay principal and interest on general obligation bonds, Series 2010A, 2011, 2012, 2012A, 2013A, 2016, and 2017. I, the motion would be to approve a resolution to support the application of the Next Level Northwest to receive grant funding from the J.P. Morgan Chase Advancing Cities Program. 5, Health and Human Services Committee. The motion would be to adopt as resolution authorizing the village president to execute an intergovernmental agreement for the regional assessment of fair housing, AFH. B, the motion would be to direct staff to direct draft an ordinance adopting the Home Kitchen Act and amend Chapter 95 Health and Sanitation to include home kitchen operation regulations. C, the motion would be to refer the CDBG 2017 Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, CAPER, to the Plan Commission for review and comment at a public hearing. 6, Transportation Committee. The motion would be to adopt an ordinance amending Title 7, Chapter 74, Schedule V, Yield Intersections, Sumac Lane and Forest Lane. B, the motion would be to recommend to adopt an ordinance amending Title 7, Chapter 74, Schedule V, Yield Intersections, Brookstone Drive and Springwood Drive. C, the recommendation would be to approve an access agreement between the Village of Schaumburg, Motorola Solutions, Inc. of Schaumburg, Illinois, and WIM Core Portfolio Owner of LLC of Delaware for the provision of a full access point as part of the Progress Parkway construction and approve the required resolution. D, the motion would be to authorize the village manager to execute the non-advertising transit shelter agreement with Pace Suburban Bus and approve the required resolution. 7, Planning, Building, and Development Committee. A, the motion would be to refer the revision to Policy Statement 1.44, Waiver of Fees, to Committee of the Whole for review and direct staff to draft amendments to the municipal code to establish late fees for raffle licenses, fundraising licenses, and special events, and establish a public right-of-way deposit. B, the motion would be to approve the proposed revision to Chapter 152 of the Municipal Electrical Code to include an amendment to Article 230.70A1 of the 2014 National Electrical Code requiring service equipment disconnection. C, the motion would be to approve the proposed revision to Chapter 153 of the Municipal Building Code to offer a third extension to Section R 314.2.2 and R 315.2.2 of the International Residential Code regarding installation of interconnected smoke and carbon monoxide alarms.
Poll, please.
So noted.
Yeah.
8, Zoning Board of Appeals. A, the motion would be to approve a special use for Internet Auto Sales Facility and parking variations for Lux Motorsport, 980 Remington Road. B, the motion would be to deny a special use for home occupation photography for Arbery Rodheim Photography, 1443 Colby Lane. C, the motion would be to approve a site plan amendment, special use for Type C restaurant and special use for drive-through for Arby's, 522 West Gulf Road. D, the motion would be to approve a variation to allow an electronic message board sign and a variation for an additional pre-menu board sign for Starbucks, 1080 South Roselle Road. E, motion would be to approve an amendment to the Municipal Code Title 7 and Title 15 relating to electric vehicle infrastructure.
Poll, please.
Was that Sullivan?
Yes.
Thank you.
9, Old Schaumburg Center Commission. The motion would be to approve an architectural approval for Fat Fat Restaurant, 17 South Roselle Road. 10, resolutions. A, the motion would be to adopt as Resolution R18-096, authorizing the village manager and village clerk to sign a lease agreement between the Village of Schaumburg and Trickster Art Gallery, 190 South Roselle Road, 2018 to 2023. B, the motion would be to adopt as Resolution R18-097, authorizing a subrecipient agreement with Clearbrook. C, the motion would be to adopt as Resolution R18-098, authorizing a subrecipient agreement with Fellowship Housing Corporation. D, the motion would be to adopt as Resolution R18-099, authorizing execution of all Community Development Block Grant subrecipient agreements for program year 2018. E, the motion would be to adopt as Resolution R18-100, authorizing the village manager to execute an agreement by and between the Village of Schaumburg and T-Corp, Inc. for the water pumping station number 3 reservoir cleaning. F, the motion will be to adopt as Resolution R18-101, authorizing the village manager and village clerk to execute an agreement by and between the Village of Schaumburg and Baxter and Woodman for the water model and master plan. G, the motion would be to adopt as Resolution R18-102, authorizing the village manager and village clerk to execute an agreement by and between the Village of Schaumburg and Trotter and Associates for Phase 3 engineering services for the sanitary sewer rim and invert collection. H, the motion will be to adopt as Resolution R18-101, authorizing the village president and village clerk to execute an intergovernmental agreement.
Should be 103.
Oh, excuse me, R18-103, authorizing the village president and village clerk to execute an intergovernmental agreement between the Village of Schaumburg and other Cook County units of government for 2020 to 2025 assessment of fair housing. I, the motion would be to adopt as Resolution R-18-104, authorizing the village to support the application of Next Level Northwest to receive grant funding from J.P. Morgan Chase Advancing Cities Program. J, the motion will be to adopt as Resolution R-18-105, authorizing the village manager and village clerk to execute an access agreement by and between the Village of Schaumburg, Motorola Solutions, Inc., and WIM Core Portfolio Owner, LLC. K, the motion would be to adopt as Resolution R-18-106, authorizing the village manager to execute the non-advertising transit shelter agreement with Pace Suburban Bus. 11 ordinances. A, the motion would be to waive first reading and adopt as Ordinance 18-122, abating taxes levied for the year 2018, heretofore levied to pay principal and interest on general obligation bonds, Series 2010A, Series 2011, Series 2012, Series 2012A, Series 2013A, Series 2016, Series 2017 of the Village of Schaumburg. B, the motion would,
This one, yeah.
pull B or A?
Pool B.
B.
Yep, thank
Daley?
you. Yes. Yes.
B, the ordinance is to amend the 2015 International Residential Code and the 2014 National Electric Code, pulled by Trustee Daley. C, the motion would be to waive first reading and adopt as Ordinance 2123, 18-123, granting a special use for Internet auto sales facility and parking variation for Lux Motorsport, 980 Remington Road. D, the motion would be to waive first reading and adopt as Ordinance 18-124, granting a site plan amendment, special use for Type C restaurant and special use for drive-through for Arby's, 522 West Gulf Road. E, the ordinance would be to waive first reading and adopt as Ordinance 18-125, granting a variation to allow an electronic message board sign and a variation for an additional pre-menu board sign for Starbucks, 1080 South Roselle Road. F, the motion would be to waive first reading and adopt as ordinance 8. Okay. And that would be an ordinance amending Title 7 and Title Chapter 15 relating to electronic vehicle infrastructure. So that's pulled.
This goes with
Okay.
8E. Yep.
Yes, so. G, the motion would be to waive first reading and adopt as ordinance 18-126, granting architectural approval for Fat Restaurant, 17 South Roselle Road. The motion would be to waive first reading and adopt as ordinance number 18-127, an ordinance amending Title 7, Chapter 74, Schedule V, Yield Intersection, Summit Lane and Forest Lane. I, the motion would be to waive first reading and adopt as ordinance 18-128, amending Title 7, Chapter 74, Schedule V, Yield Intersection, Brookston Drive, and Springwood Drive. This concludes the consent agenda.
Trustee Daly.
Do you need a motion?
To approve the consent agenda as presented with the items pulled as noted.
Those items are 7C, which goes with 11B, and 8E, which goes with 11F.
Need a second?
Second. The clerk, call the board.
Trustee Daly.
Aye.
Trustee Madej absent. Trustee Dunham.
Aye.
Trustee Sullivan.
Aye.
Trustee Conley.
Aye.
Trustee Kozak.
Aye.
By right vote, so next motion carries. Trustee Daly, did you want to elaborate on that?
Yes, so regarding the item having to do with smoke and carbon monoxide alarms, I understand what the intent here, and of course, safety is paramount to us, but I think there's we're putting an overburden on the residents by making them have to interconnect their smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. As long as they have perfectly working good ones, I don't see why we should make them take the current ones out, replace them with either wired or wireless ones. I know we did put some dollar amount in there, but quite frankly, any kind of, if you've ever had any work done, which I've had a lot done in the last 18 months, it doesn't take long to eat through that minimal dollar amount. I just think it's burdensome and something we should not be requiring. We should certainly make sure that they've got working smoke and CO2 alarms, but I think it's a burdensome that is unnecessary.
Further questions, comments? Board?
I think there was a staff request that this be referred to committee of the whole for ease to discuss.
Do you want Julie Fitzgerald from the Community Development Department can come up and give you an overview of the item?
The item is a code amendment which was recommended and referred from, was recommended by the Electrical Commission. It was discussed at the Electrical Commission and then recommended and discussed at PBD. The village has adopted the 2015 International Residential Code, which requires that if you pull a permit and do work on your house, then the resident has to upgrade their smoke and carbon monoxide detectors to be interconnected. They can be battery operated, they don't have to be hardwired, but they do have to be interconnected. There are a couple of exceptions listed in the IRC. Those are for outdoor work such as roofing and siding, or installing a new patio or a deck, and also for miscellaneous changes and installations to the mechanical and plumbing systems. The Electrical Commission recommended adding a third exception, which would be that the requirement would not apply for small miscellaneous electrical work around the home. This can involve adding an outlet or adding a new fixture or something like that. The recommendation was to encourage people to get permits, and they felt that if people were doing a couple $100 worth of work in their house for some minor electrical work, and then they were hit with $300 to $500 worth of requirements, it would likely push people into not getting a permit and maybe not using a licensed electrician when the work, for the work when they should. So that was the reasoning behind the third exception being added. If the board wanted to consider additional exceptions, then staff would be comfortable referring this to committee of the whole to give us some time to see what some other communities are doing and I think talk in community development with our colleagues in the fire department and come up with a recommendation.
A motion's in order. With further discussion?
Now, there's one point of clarification, though. The ordinance that's on the agenda contains two items. It contains one which was approved on the consent agenda, 7B, which doesn't deal with the carbon monoxide smoke alarms, plus section 2 is the carbon monoxide interconnection part. If the board refers the carbon monoxide smoke alarm to committee of the whole, the ordinance can be adopted if section 2 is deleted in its entirety, and then the other provision would go into effect, which the board approved as a recommendation. And I can cue that up once you get there.
Further comments from the board?
I'm confused because I thought on
Trustee
reading
Conley.
this, that it was being recommended that an exception be put in so that if someone were doing minor work, they would not have to come in for a permit.
That is correct. There's two exceptions that exist in the IRC, and the Electrical Commission and PBD recommended the third, having to do with electrical work.
And Trustee Daly wants to go farther.
Jamie's here. I mean, this is already exempting people from having to come in for these particular permits that are small work, and it's listed what they are. And so it wouldn't mean that they would have to interconnect, because they would just do this small work. But if it's more major work that somebody's doing, are you saying we should exempt it from that as well?
I'm saying I'm not comfortable certainly with the dollar amount being suggested. We're saying a few $100s, and I can tell you that putting in smoke alarms and CO2s throughout a house can cost, certainly $300 to $400 to do that. And it's we're adding an extra burden when it may be unnecessary.
Right. Maybe I'm not
I
understanding.
will only speak for my own situation.
Okay. 1 second while the car changes her batteries, so we get a record of everything. Batteries died. Hold that thought.
Yeah.
That's a good sign.
It's alive.
Okay.
Okay.
Can we hear
Thank
from
you.
Now understanding what trustees Daly's issue is, I agree we should send it to committee of the whole so we can discuss it further and
I
understand
am
it.
fine with that. So
Motion
I
to
will make
refer.
that motion to refer this item to committee of the whole.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Would the clerk please pull the board?
Trustee Daly?
Aye.
Trustee Madey, absent. Trustee Dunham?
Aye.
Trustee Sullivan?
Aye.
Trustee Conley?
Aye.
Trustee Kozak?
Aye.
5 ayes, votes no nays, motion carries.
Okay, then, if there's a motion to waive first reading and approve as ordinance number 18-129, amending the 2015 International Residential Code and the 2014 National Electric Code as presented in the board packet, but deleting section 2 of that ordinance in its entirety, that would be appropriate.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Would the clerk please pull the board?
Trustee Daly.
Aye.
Trustee Madey absent. Trustee Dunham.
Aye.
Trustee Sullivan.
Aye.
Trustee Conley.
Aye.
Trustee Kozak.
Aye.
5 ayes, votes, no nays, motion carries. Trustee Sullivan had an item.
Hi, there's a young man that wanted to speak to item F, the ordinance amending the electric vehicle infrastructure.
They were items 8E and 11F, which dealt
Young man?
with electric vehicle.
Thanks, sir.
Good evening, thank you. Try to make this quick, but my name's Bhavik Dani, and I'm a resident of Schaumburg. I attended the Zoning Board of Appeals 2 weeks ago when this item was presented and up for discussion. I wanted to just share some concerns. My understanding with this ordinance is there's kind of two parts. One is proposing some amended code changes, and then the other makes a recommendation for the village to become owners of some car charging stations. So I'll try to quickly run through the concerns I have with the code changes. Mr. President and trustees, my main concern over the proposed code changes was that staff did not collect any input or opinions or any knowledge from any of the 19 car charging stations that are already installed in the village. And I think that the input from the business community or those who own the car charging stations would have been important and would prevent future changes. A problem did not occur, and public-private needs have never been neglected. So there was really no need to propose the code amendments, in my opinion, humble opinion, but I think it's good that staff is working towards this. Just, there was things discussed at the zoning board that was clearly laid out. Ms. Martha Dooley, who's, I believe, in charge of a green team or a special department for this technology, she clearly laid out what types of installations are permissible and what is not. For example, she was mentioning that you can avoid installation of bollards, and sidewalk installations would be permissible as long as there was enough clearance for ADA compliance, but none of that language is found in any of the proposed code changes. And instead, there are some ambiguous sections, and there's a lot of discretion to the director of the department, and I think it would cause problems with some of the way those things are written for people who want to install car charging stations, but the code makes it impractical or not possible. I can give you some small examples of it. For example, the code calls for landscaping to be installed around an EV charging station. And I myself have installed a total of 4 ports in the village of Schaumburg several years ago at a hotel. And I mean, this is kind of similar to requiring landscaping around an ATM machine. This is a machine where people need to press buttons, swipe RFID cards to activate a charging session, and you know, to propose kind of landscaping or walking on top of bushes and mulch to access a charging station seems like a terrible idea. I also saw some parts in the code changes which requires extra signage, and that signage will raise cost for installation of these charging stations on private property. And I know staff has probably got really good intentions in mind, but one of the signage, it says Village of Schaumburg is not liable for malfunction or damage to your vehicle. That's like us asking gas stations to hang that sign next to each one of their pumps. And I think overall what they really wanted to do was to encourage people to adopt this technology and to install it. But I think the code at many times kind of seems to discourage it. There were some questions regarding advertising, which I think were properly addressed at the zoning board, but I did ask for a follow-up meeting because we have a proposed project with your guys' support that wants to install 6 charging stations, and I'm fearful that with the new code changes, that may not be possible. I would love to meet with staff and discuss that, but I have not been able to achieve that yet. There are a lot of common sense objections to the code changes. It just never was required, but for the sake of time tonight, I won't go through the entire list. There was a second component of that program, or at least all the memos and paperwork that I read through. At the end of all the proposed code changes, which are mostly definitions from the internet, it makes a recommendation to the village board for the city or for the village to purchase and install car charging stations. And I wish that the business community or that people with actual real-life experience with the charging stations were invited to kind of share some thoughts on that, because, well, just, it's not, in our opinion, we wish to share, it's not a good idea. I think the proposed quotation for 4 charging stations was $20,000. I did copy a national retailer on that same email that has sold to many local Schaumburg businesses far below the cost that was shown to the Transportation Committee. And I think that it's creating a liability. Charging stations would require networking plans. These are similar to cell phones. The village, in my humble opinion, you guys work really hard and diligent to make sure we spend our money wisely. And so I just wanted to prevent an innocent mistake here. These things will become liabilities. No municipality has ever made money by installing them. I did compliment our staff for saying I'm glad they're forward-thinking, but this technology and government programs have been around for several years. And City of Charlotte, for example, there are some municipalities that can afford to dispense free electricity. I'm not sure that our hometown is. And the locations at which these charging stations are proposed are municipality property. And having been an electric car driver for 6 years myself, I don't know when I've ever gone to municipality property to charge up. We usually charge up at home. And City of Charlotte, for example, did offer free electric for several years. And they had a surplus, so they could afford to do that. But today they're looking at turning those things down. And you end up having to charge a customer like $2 an hour to charge at these things. And nobody ever pays that money. So they end up sitting empty, not used. And the owners of these charging stations still have to spend $200 or $400 a year to keep them networked, like cell phone plans, and then you need staff to monitor it, and then it just becomes a really expensive proposition. I would love to humbly give my opinion that instead of spending $20,000 on becoming charging station owners, maybe if the village board may please, they could perhaps repurpose those funds, maybe offer a $500 incentive to 40 restaurants to install them.
If we could have Julie down here so we could clarify some of this.
And perhaps Jamie Clark, as well as the...
No, it's come from us. It's gone through the whole process. Julie?
This one went through zoning, not election.
Did it go through zoning?
Yeah, this was through zoning. Julie, my staff went
Because it came through PVD too.
I can start on this one.
That was
This is a code amendment. It started, I think it's a concept and transportation committee. The actual code language went to PBD. It was referred from our village board, directed staff to conduct the public hearing to modify the code. And that did go to the Zoning Board of Appeals a couple weeks ago. And the actual ordinance and the code language is what is in your packet tonight. It is unrelated to the village initiatives to install electric vehicle charging stations on village property. This is a zoning code amendment. The purpose of it is to create clear guidance and regulations for businesses who are interested in installing electric vehicle charging stations.
So it's not our intent to buy electric charging stations for the village property at this
There is an
point.
initiative to do that, but that's not what's on the agenda tonight. This is to
the
regulate.
zoning to allow for opening it up within the village for all businesses.
Correct,
and-
correct. It's not prohibited now, but because there are no specific regulations, it's not clear what kind of requirements would be.
And the charging stations for the village property will come later.
I believe that has already come, but I'd have to check on the timing on that.
Please.
Mhm.
They can't.
Okay. There you go.
I have a question. Julie, can you explain this landscaping? Any of these that I've ever seen have been like in a parking garage against a wall, or they've been, I've seen them in public parking lots in other states. And how would you have landscaping around?
They just, if they're out within the larger parking field, the code as proposed requires that they be within a landscaped island. So it doesn't necessarily, like similar to how usually if you see a light pole in a parking field or a signage, a kiosk of some sort, it's just an added protection, so you don't have maybe quite as many bollards around it and for aesthetic reasons. So you'd still be able to walk up to it, and the intention is you can walk up to it and access it, not necessarily standing in the landscape, but it would be somewhat protected and not kind of between parking stalls.
Kiosk would count as landscaping?
No, no.
There are some of these at Woodfield.
There are now.
Yeah.
Are they in landscaped areas, or are they just
Jack,
sitting out?
it's more or less outside of Kinfork. Your lower level west side. And as in respect of Mr. Donnie's comments, I don't think that that these were put in with any kind of landscaping. They do, however, have some bollards or, vertical poles and so forth, but they're, that's the only protection they have. There's no other, nothing else around them. And we're at Woodfield fairly often, and on days when the parking lot is jam-packed, these stations are empty. I've never seen a car in one.
And we were looking at supply and demand into the future when we were talking about this, I believe.
Well, I don't think we required Woodfield to put those in, did we,
No,
Julie?
they did it on their own.
Yeah.
Further comments, this discussion?
I don't. Mr. Donnie has any comments?
Trustee Daly.
I think there was a couple other things. So one was landscaping. So if I understand, the purpose of the landscaping is so that it provides some protection for the charging station to be in there and not just sitting out in an open parking lot somewhere.
Correct, and I think there's some aesthetic component to it as well.
But, excuse me.
Go ahead.
I was, the landscaping though, that is gonna further reduce the, parking. It's gonna, create a larger buffer, around, Mr. Donnie, is this what you're talking about?
Oh, yes, Trustee Dunham, actually, several charging stations that are in the village, what's most common is you'll have a sidewalk at the end of the parking bay, and the charging station would be installed on the sidewalk, so that in between two cars. And it's a 6-foot sidewalk, so that someone that needs ADA accessibility can still get by. How do you put landscaping into a situation like that? It would do exactly as you said, Trustee Dunham. It would either cut into the parking or reduce the sidewalk size, and then before you know it, you can't have.
Cut into the other parking, the non-electric charging parking that would butt up against. Yeah, got it.
Either or.
Okay. All right.
I think there was another point that you were making about signage. So we're indicating that we should have signage in there saying the village is not responsible?
Yes, Trustee Daly, if my understanding is correct, the village staff would like any private owner of a charging station to install, not one, but I think 3 signs. One would say, the village property, another is the time of use, and another is a time limitation or something.
Okay, so why would we require that? I think his point's well taken, that we don't do that at gas stations. Why would we require that here?
I can't speak to that specific language. I think some of the other signage are things like who to call if it's broken, for management of it, and some general things like that. Hours that they can use, there's a time limit on, the time limit.
So if there's a use or a time limit, that's understandable, but it would seem unnecessary to indicate the village of Schaumburg is not, it's not even a matter if somebody wants to sue us anyways, they'll sue us, as you're well aware. So that would seem unnecessary, but, okay.
Should we go back to committee with this?
I don't know.
And this, when I'm reading the ordinance, it says under signage that this statement about Village of Schaumburg is not liable is only for ones located on the village-operated property. And it's number 3 in the D section of the ordinance under signage. So saying that there's no, that this liability business, that says only if it were located on village property. Now, there are 2 other signed things here, talking about the amount of advertising, talking about signage that says it's only for, this parking space is only for vehicles and days and times of operation. But I think the one, if I'm reading this correctly, that says that it has to have posted not liable, the village isn't liable, would only be on our property.
Trustee Conley, that was addressed at the zoning board of appeals. I made the same comment, and staff said that they would make some effort towards fixing that. Or
Yeah, so they
maybe-
must have fixed it
That's
since
just-
the May.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That's one out of the
Yeah,
other
all the
signs
other
are-
questions, I understand. I feel like it should go back to committee.
I
I'd
have
like
to
to
agree
talk
with you.
about it more.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm
we're
fine
not
with that.
holding anybody up from putting any in right now, and if, most of them are at hotels and some office buildings, and now a few at Woodfield, so, I mean, I don't think there's any rush.
Even if we have an application, they're not prohibited. They're allowed to put them in. We
Yeah,
just
they just-
don't have these specific regulations.
And do we feel like we have any right now that are causing problems, that are located in an unsafe location?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay,
I believe this was all to try to encourage
yeah,
more
initially it
electric
was, because we
charging
had that
stations.
guy who was coming in asking us to put free ones in.
It's been suggested that refer the matter back to Standing Committee.
There's no motion, though.
I would so move.
Second,
Moved and
What
seconded.
committee?
Committee of the whole, or is
committee of the whole.
Committee of the whole. Clerk, please pull the board.
Trustee Daly.
Aye.
Trustee Meady absent. Trustee Dunham.
Aye.
Trustee Sullivan.
Aye.
Trustee Conley. Trustee
Aye.
Kozak.
Aye. 5 ayes, votes, no nays, motion carries. Does that satisfy your concerns?
Yes, Mr. President, I will, if I'm welcome to, may I join the committee to hold further discuss?
It's an
Right,
open
that's the
meeting.
idea.
Yep, I
It's an
appreciate-
open meeting, so you're welcome to come.
I appreciate your time, thank you.
Was there any other items that we addressed at the standing committees?
There are, on committee reports, we have one other matter, it's 2 items under zoning board of appeals. There's an amendment to the municipal code regarding daycare facilities as well as a proposed ordinance.
Who brought that up?
Who's the chair? Who's going to speak for the
Julie,
zoning
can you
board?
come up and give us a brief overview of the zoning board hearing?
Yes, this is a code amendment. The concept was discussed at PBD earlier this summer, and the initiative, I think, was one that Trustee Daly asked to be discussed at the Planning, Building, and Development Committee. The committee, what the discussion was to allow daycares within the planned manufacturing district. The committee recommended some that code drafts some language allowing daycares in the planned manufacturing district, however, put some parameters or restrictions around it. For example, locating it on the periphery of the district and making sure that there's no contamination or potential hazards around the immediate vicinity of the daycare. Staff worked with legal counsel and had this language drafted and presented to the Zoning Board of Appeals 2 weeks ago for public hearing. There is a list of criteria in your packet. I've summarized some of them. They have to be on the periphery of the district, cannot be adjacent to the M1 district, which is a more heavy manufacturing district, need to be adjacent to a business district, and that the outdoor play area has to be a safe distance from other manufacturing uses, and they have to be in a standalone building, so they cannot be in a multi-tenant building. The Zoning Board of Appeals reviewed the item and felt that daycares were an incompatible use within a manufacturing district, and they recommended denial of the amendment. Jamie Clark is here representing the Zoning Board of Appeals and can speak more to the discussion that occurred at that meeting.
Jamie, you want to come up?
Jamie Clare, Zoning Board of Appeals. One of the things that we were concerned about is in the future, I remember, if I'm not mistaken, I don't have the minutes with me on that one because I didn't expect that to come up, is that it's restrictive as far as other businesses moving in next door in the future. Wasn't that one of the things that came up at the meeting, I believe? Yeah. So if you were if you kept the ordinance the way the staff was suggesting it, and a daycare center moved in, and then it would restrict a certain business from moving in next door. So that was one of the main concerns that we had.
Questions, comments from the board? Trustee Daly?
So I was the one who originally approached staff about this, and it came about from someone I had talked to who was interested in basically wanting to be close to clients that were in the MP area, which is, if you'll recall, is up north of Gulf, basically between Meacham and Roselle Road, which is not a heavy truck traffic area or like our industrial park. It's kind of a different office and a little bit of warehousing and that in there, and they wanted to be close. In my conversation with staff, they said, well, it might be possible if they're on the edges, the periphery, and so I asked if we could at least pursue and have some discussion on this. I'm in favor of it. I think it allows people that want to remain close to their kids, and when they drop them off to be able to be in there. But I understand the concerns from zoning board, but that's all.
Questions, comments from the board?
I think I favor them being there too, and I don't quite understand what the concern was. There were statements made by some members of the zoning board, things like it'll lower the property value of properties on either side and things of that nature.
I don't think it was so much a concern lowering the property values, but one of the, in the ordinance was that you can't have certain contaminations, you can't have certain businesses. So what you're doing is you're limiting the properties on either side of who can buy it and who can have, what type of business you have in there. That was our concern.
Yeah, they can't do any refining or.
Well, there's a lot, it's pretty restrictive. I mean, if you read the way the ordinance is written. Maybe it needs a little tweaking as far as what businesses are allowed.
Further questions, comments from the board?
I think if I can address that, I think I was not at the zoning board hearing. I've read the minutes. I was not there, but there is the provision that says that. Of course, my computer. I was going to read it specifically. Of course, it's just crazy. It says that they have to provide documentation that there's no contamination on site. And I think the question was, well, contamination doesn't really recognize property lines. And so you could have contamination on an adjacent or a nearby property. And there's really no way to control that, and the contamination could happen even if you put into effect something in the code that says that there could be you have to prove no contamination on any property when the daycare goes in, contamination could occur while the daycare is there, and that would be a concern. I think it was just some general concerns that it was within the industrial park, and there's been some other cases. There was a case recently where there was some adjacent businesses that felt like an industrial use that was going in was incompatible with them, and they were the existing non-industrial users, and that seemed to be something that came up at the zoning board as well. But I don't think, it wouldn't restrict what could go in next door. Once the daycare is there, anything could go in next door.
Further questions, comments from the board?
Yes. So.
Trustee Dunham.
The effect of this, would you please restate the effect of this ordinance?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
What is this ordinance going to do?
It would allow daycares in the planned manufacturing district, which is our more light manufacturing district, with certain criteria. Those being they have to be in a standalone building, can't be adjacent to the heavy manufacturing district, must be adjacent to a business district, and they have to prove that there's no contamination on the site prior to, as part of the special use evaluation.
And this is staff's recommendation?
It was staff's recommendation. Staff drafted the language with legal counsel following the recommendation from the Planning, Building, and Development Committee.
Further questions, comments from the board?
In this.
Trustee Conley?
In this district, we do have some recreational facilities, like.
Correct.
The Park District has a large facility that was formerly a tennis club, and they bought it, and they've repurposed it in many ways. And over the years, we've had other activities up there that have included children within the manufacturing district.
Correct.
Educational things. And those uses weren't a detriment to the rest of the district as far as the district itself, right? That we're aware of, I guess.
No, we don't know that there's been any negative impact on the district based on those uses.
I mean, people need to take their kids to daycare, and they want to take their kids to daycare either close to where they live, so they pick up kids on the way home and to work, or they want to be close to where they work. And when you think about that area up there, there's a lot of employees. You know, this is not like we've got steel plants or refinery or any, billowing smoke in that area. I don't think it's a bad ordinance as written to allow this in the area.
Well, the motion's in order.
If the motion was to approve, it would be to reject the recommendation of the Zoning Board of Appeals and waive first reading and adopt as ordinance number 18-130, amending the Municipal Code Title 15, Chapter 154, various sections relating to daycare centers, which is presented in the packet.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
We need a roll call on that,
Excuse me. Please.
Trustee Daley?
Call the roll.
Aye.
Trustee Madej, absent. Trustee Dunham?
Aye.
Trustee Sullivan?
Aye.
Trustee Conley?
Aye.
Trustee Kozak?
Aye.
5 ayes, votes, no nays, motion carries. Comments from the audience? You waited patiently for board discussion to take place. Now it's your chance to join the discussion.
Later.
Council report.
I have no report other than to indicate that at the close of our business, I will be asking for a motion to go into closed session under Section 2C5 of the Open Meetings Act to discuss the acquisition of real property, and we will not have any reason to reconvene at the end of that closed session.
Anything further, Councilor?
No, nothing further. That's all I have for my report.
Manager's report.
No report tonight.
Any new business to come before the board? Unfinished business? Trustee comments, mentions? Motion adjourns in order?
So moved.
Well, the motion would be to go into closed session in accordance with Section 2C5 of the Open Meetings Act to discuss the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the public body. And we will not be reconvening, so at the adjournment of the closed session will be the adjournment of the meeting.
That was the motion.
So moved.
Second.
I just made the motion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that- Trustee Connolly would be the
Dueling
second.
motions here.
Okay.
I didn't know parliamentarily that was an appropriate way to make a motion.
Clerk, please pull the board.
Done it before.
Trustee Bailey.
Aye.
Trustee Madey absent. Trustee Dunham.
Aye.
Trustee Sullivan.
Aye.
Trustee Conley.
Aye.
Trustee Kozak.
Aye.
6, 5 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Thank you, folks. See you in the